Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to JavaPro. Today I have a special guest here, Emily Jiang. It's great to have you.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, Emily, how was JCON for you?
Yeah, it went really well. I'm really pleased with a very kind of the engaging audience. So it's a well attended, and there are so many really good questions. So I felt really happy to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, great. That's good to hear. Emily, you're so famous in the Java community, but uh, who don't know you already, so maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so I work for IBM. I am based in the UK. So I work in the IBM Hursley lab. I'm the Liberty microservice architect and also the advocate. So I work on open source project, MicroProfile and Open Liberty. So I'm the MicroProfile architect for Liberty as well. So I worked most of the time on micro profile specifications and also some help along with others kind of specifications and infrastructures and release processes and etc. So I'm really active in the micro profile community. I'm also a Java champion, so which means actually actually I use Java every day and really love Java. So that's a great programming language to use.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, your talk was about programming model for microservices, MicroProfile, and Spring with comparison.
Yeah,
And you had another talk about 12-factor app with
yeah,
MicroProfile and Kubernetes.
yeah.
And maybe we can start with the first session you had, programming model, microservices, and MicroProfile and Spring with comparison. Uh, very interesting for many people because most developers they ask the question, hey, what's actually the difference between MicroProfile and Spring? And then mostly the speakers they say, I'm not familiar with Spring, or the other guys say, I'm not so familiar with Jakarta EE and MicroProfile. But you did this battle, great. But for getting started, what actually is MicroProfile?
Right. MicroProfile is open source community. Actually, it was established 4 years ago by IBM, Red Hat, Piara, Tommy Tribe, and others. So these companies and plus some individuals. So it's kind of the come together, trying evolve the Java, like the Java community, help the Java developers to develop cloud native applications. So we kind of produce standards and APIs for Java developer to use for writing their microservices. In this way, it's a kind of quite a few, about a dozen runtime implement MicroProfile APIs. So it's a standard for developing cloud native applications. So such as the Open Liberty, which I work on, and WebSphere Liberty, of course, and also Halliday, Quarkus, Wildfly, Piara, and also Tommy and Cumulus EE. The list goes on and on. And there's the other kind of the trend is, there's a new runtime kind of evolving. And the good news is the most of the new runtime also support MicroProfile API, which means for Java developers, once they learn about MicroProfile API, they don't need to worry about which runtime they are going to use, because they don't need to change their application if their company say, okay, tomorrow we are going to buy this license, and we are going to deploy these applications to a different runtime. And then the developer don't need to change their code. So their code will run unchanged in a different runtime, as long as that runtime also support MicroProfile.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Can we say it's MicroProfile is kind of like lightweight Jakarta E?
Yeah, you can see that a MicroProfile is kind of geared towards a cloud native, and also evolve at a very rapid speed.
Mm-hmm.
And it has so far, like in the platform release, it has 8 MicroProfile specifications plus 4 specifications from Jakarta, such as CDI, JAX, JSON-B, and JSON-P. And also MicroProfile has a few standalone specifications, such as like a reactive messaging, reactive streams operators, GraphQL, or the context propagation, and etc.
Yeah.
And also the MicroProfile long-running actions is also in the draft state and to be released soon as well.
Yeah, you already mentioned some frameworks that implement MicroProfile. Interesting question is, what's actually the difference between such MicroProfile frameworks and the old application server, or is there any difference actually between the modern application servers and the so-called microservice frameworks like Helidon or Quarkus and so on?
Right. The beauty is both Helidon and Quarkus will all support MicroProfile APIs as their cloud native strategy for like microservice developers. So basically the new runtime and also plus the kind of existing runtime, and like for some runtime such as the Liberty, they support both Jakarta and MicroProfile. So this is the beauty. Similar thing is applied to like Payara as well. So it's that and Wildfly. So originally they were like the Java EE runtime, and then in the Jakarta EE runtime. And then when MicroProfile like came to existence, this runtime saw the opportunity, and so this is great kind of initiative, and for their cloud native strategy. So that's why they all support MicroProfile as well.
Okay. Yeah, and then we have the Spring world, and yeah, I think this is completely different. Most people, they decide for I am a Spring guy, or I am MicroProfile Java EE guy. So what's actually the difference? What do you think? And what's in comparison maybe the better approach, or do you say there's no better approach? It's different. Use what you're familiar with it. So what do you think?
Yeah. This is a great question. This is so many people asked me this question. So that's why I created that talk, the comparison. Actually, the talk alone is not just theory. Actually, the talk was based on a real use case. So in IBM, we converted the one of the microservice originally written using Spring Boot, Spring framework. And then like we want to compare like the difference and the similarity between the MicroProfile and the Spring. So we directly converted that application and called Blue Computing. So it's that's quite a big application directly from Spring framework to MicroProfile, to use MicroProfile. So my talk was inspired by that experiment. So the team compared, and then like I just learned their experience, and also is kind of I would like to share with the others. So basically, in quick summary, so both the Spring framework and the MicroProfile framework are really good for developing cloud native like applications. So there's some similarity. Also, there's some differences. So the similarities, like they can use different tools to achieve the same goal. So such as metrics, health, they are very similar. Like Spring use Spring use like a Spring Fin, and MicroProfile use REST client or connect the microservices together. Another thing, the Spring uses Spring config, and MicroProfile uses MicroProfile config for config the microservices. So basically, the quality of the services for achieving this kind of quality of services, they all have alternative like a tool to fulfill the same thing. So the takeaway from that experiment is MicroProfile is much simpler, have less code. The other thing, the MicroProfile is a standard, so there's a more runtime to support a MicroProfile. For Spring, yeah, you use a Spring Boot, like a deployed Tomcat or some others. So basically, Spring, yeah, is owned by one company, and a MicroProfile is kind of, yeah, they both open source. However, Spring is directly maintained by one company, and MicroProfile maintained by the whole community. And there's about a dozen implementations for you to choose from. And then in terms of the size, you know, if you write your Spring Boot app, and you have to package all these dependencies, you manage these CVEs. If there's some CVE issue, you need to manage it yourself. For MicroProfile, all these runtime come with the implementation. All you need to use is, if you are doing Maven, you just add the MicroProfile dependency, and the implementation, like the runtime directly provide the implementation. And the runtime, such as the Open Liberty, will manage the CVEs if there's some CVE issue. So you can produce a really lightweight microservices, and then so that will be a really easy to maintain microservices. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. In the past, Spring was much faster in the development process, and so then we have to wait for many features for a long time in the past. And then when MicroProfile came up, then I have read in many magazines and on blogs. So now MicroProfile is here. We don't need Spring anymore. So do you think? Yeah, I guess you're convinced that you should be convinced that MicroProfile is the better approach. Okay, but is there any maybe activity the Spring community that is developing again faster, more interesting features, or is the MicroProfile development process now much faster than the Java Enterprise process was in the past?
Yeah, this is a great question. So MicroProfile was originally initiated because Java EU, was really slow. It took like 5 years for release. You know, in the cloud native world, that we have new things every day. We cannot wait for 5 years if you want some quality services straight away. So that's why MicroProfile was created So we want to be agile. So now MicroProfile have releases like 3 times a year. We do releases, and also each specifications, they can have their own cadence. They can release whenever they want. So this is kind of the really moving along very rapidly. And the other thing is kind of the runtimes, such as Open Liberty, also the Quarkus, and I think also the Payara, Halidon. We all kept up with the fast release cadence. This is awesome to see, actually. Like normally, like in the past in Java EE, it took a year for the implementation to catch up with the kind of API release, spec release. Now it's a MicroProfile, like okay, we release a MicroProfile in February, and the runtime can release maybe at the end of February, 2 weeks later, or even like 3 weeks later. It's not with kind of moved along very rapidly. So this is great. It can address the gaps and also fix the problem and introduce new features. In a kind of timely manner. So we are all impatient nowadays. Is because the technology moved too fast. So we don't have a lot of time to waste.
Then you had another talk about live coding 12 factor app with MicroProfile and Kubernetes. Maybe you can explain in some sentences what actually is a 12-factor app for everybody who is not familiar with this kind of approach.
Yeah, this is a good question. For the 12-factor app, actually it's because it's we live in the world like people trying to develop cloud native applications. Let it to be modular monolith or microservices. However, what's the best practices? Are there any rules or something I need to follow? And to be able to, why is it called cloud native? So how can I make sure I indeed created, cloud native application? So there must be a set of rules I should follow to like guarantee my cloud native application, the true cloud native. So 12-factor app is such a thing, is kind of methodology, best practices for cloud native for writing your cloud native applications. So which means if you comply with this 12-factor app and your cloud native applications will perform well in the cloud. So it can easily scale and can be configurable. It's not like, okay, if you change like a configuration, you have to repackage your application and push to the cloud again. So this is all this kind of reduce a lot of like repetitive tasks and etc. So all this kind of thought process. So this 12-factor app is called 12-factor app because it has 12 factors, like externalize your configuration and make them like the dev prod parity and easier to scale out your application and do port binding. So it's all of this is kind of the make sure your application can be cloud native. So it's a kind of this 12 factor is the kind of is the only concept. How can I like implement it? So it's people thinking about, oh, okay, 12 factor, that's a theory. How practical it is. So basically, in my talk, I just explain with kind of the implementation details. And then afterwards, people say, oh, okay, that's so easy. I never thought this 12 factors can be done in this easy fashion. And then maybe people will think, oh, I had wished this more kind of complicated. And maybe after talk, oh, is that actually dinner? They may not have realized that they actually unconsciously they have implemented a few factors but they did not know about. So basically, I used MicroProile plus Kubernetes to explain how to implement these 12 factors. So with a live coding demo. So it's basically after that talk, people feel, okay, that's a piece of cake. Yeah.
That sounds awesome and very interesting. And these two sessions are now online, so everybody can now watch the video and the live coding to understand how 12-factor apps work and how easy it is to implement 12-factor apps with MicroProfile and Kubernetes. And also the recorded session about the MicroProfile and Spring comparison. Emily, it was great to talk to you and was great to have you at JCON. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. So great. Yeah.
It was a pleasure. And yeah, everybody who liked our video, please subscribe our channel and see you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks.